As a ministry leader, you're walking with people through anxiety, grief, conflict, and big questions every single week. The Help Finder Bible is a simple and practical tool to help you point them to Scripture. Its unique Help Finder index includes more than 100 different life topics. So whether somebody's struggling with stress, relationships, or doubt, you can turn straight to relevant verses that speak to their situation. To learn more, go to helpfinderbible.com. That's helpfinderbible.com. Welcome to the Unstuck Church podcast. I'm Sean here again with Amy Anderson. And Amy, today's podcast is a bit different, but something we've really been looking forward to for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, we really have. And it's not just because we get to introduce a couple of great consultants from our team, but also because both of them lead churches in the great country of Canada.
They sure do. I don't know if our listeners know this, but we work with a number of Canadian churches, and that's actually how we met both Drake and Jonathan. They were Unstuck clients first before they became consultants on our team.
Yeah, both were great leaders, are great leaders, leading in great churches, but they're also strategically wired. So they're gifted thinkers and good at one of the things that's most important to us when we engage with churches, and that's making ministry actionable and very practical. So let's dive in and let Jonathan and Drake introduce themselves and hear more about what they're seeing in the Big C Church in Canada. So here's my conversation with Unstuck consultants, Jonathan Smith and Drake Farmer.
Well, I'm very excited to have two of my friends on the call today, and they are from Canada, eh? I think we have the East Coast and the West Coast covered, but Jonathan Smith and Drake Farmer is here today. They've both been consultants with us for a while. So can you just start by introducing yourself? Tell me what your day job is and how long you've been a part of the Unstuck team. And Drake, I'll start with you.
Yeah, perfect. I am executive pastor of ministries at Beulah Alliance Church in Edmonton, Alberta. And I've been a part of the Unstuck team a little over 2 years now.
Great. And Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm the lead pastor at One Church CO in Toronto, Ontario. And I think I joined the Unstuck team in March of this year, but I was on the advisory committee before that, and I was a client of yours before
Yes.
that.
Mm-hmm.
You were. I didn't get the privilege of serving One Church. I think you had Tony, and was Sarah there for staffing and structure? Well, you were in good
It was all
hands.
Tony.
It was all Tony. Ooh, he did staffing and structure?
He did everything with us, yeah.
I'll have to go back and look at those notes.
It was a COVID anomaly.
That's right. It was in COVID. That's right. I remember. Yeah, well, you did some amazing things through COVID. We had you on either our podcast or our webinar. Just your story inspired a lot of churches out there. I'd love to hear from you both. Where is your church winning right now? What's going well for you? And again, Drake, I'll start with you. I'd love to hear what you're doing and what's working.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. We worked with you guys, worked with Tony, looking at really solidifying what our playbook is and our kind of clarity towards multi-site. And that's been great in bringing our whole team kind of aligned in where we're headed. And we're launching our 5th campus in the fall. But what's been more exciting for us here is just seeing how God has been moving, how the Spirit has been moving in people's lives. Like, we have people that are like going on ChatGPT and searching like, where should I go to church? And our church is popping up like in their searches, or obviously as disciple makers are out and inviting and being a part of people's lives that they're coming. And we're seeing people driving by and just the Spirit's leading them to just, I don't know why, but I wanted to come to church. I wanted to check this out.
Wow.
And people who have no background, have never been to church, people that are moving from all over the world, coming here to Edmonton. We're just seeing a flood of people for the first time experiencing church, the first time experiencing the gospel, first time experiencing Jesus. And we're just trying to ride the wave, figuring out how to shore up a lot of our processes and especially our discipleship pathway with this flood of people, being able to just help them connect, get into a serving team, obviously in community and a discipleship relationship. It's been amazing to see this kind of explode. And Alpha's been a huge part of that for us. And this has been awesome.
Gosh, I feel like I just want to stick here for a minute because it's so interesting. When I joined the Unstuck group back in 2016 and served some churches in Canada, that just wasn't the story.
No.
It was a lot of post Christian challenges, all of this. And in the States here this year, I have just seen that revival. I have seen all of these people coming to church, and to know that it's happening in Edmonton too is just absolutely amazing. I want one more question. You talked about kind of working with us on your multi-site process and putting your playbook together. For our listeners, the playbook is just a document that really, you move from oral tradition to written, and you talk about decision rights, and you talk about this is our ministry model. Was that hard work to kind of take a step back in the midst of being a multi-site church? Because now you're ready to launch again. So you must have done some good things and got on the track to gain momentum and go again.
Yeah, a lot of it's cultural. A lot of it is things that, depending on what was, I'll put it this way: if you don't have clarity, then people will fill in that clarity for that and what they think multi-site is and isn't, and our different campuses that have different perspectives and different ways. And there was a merger in one, there was a launching of another, there was all these different pieces and bringing that alignment. So some of it was understanding some of the work that we did with Unstuck that helped us kind of like fast forward that, but a lot of it was just getting the stakeholders in a room and working that out for that clarity, knowing how is this shaping, what's the change management, where's everybody at on this journey, and helping kind of move that forward and really bringing we're at a place where we have a conviction, and a lot now is a lot of our standard operating procedures and our systems and our processes, and how does this work out in that change management. But we're seeing great success on that, which has been amazing. But a lot has just been that culture building, that this is the lens that we see things through. I constantly have staff, especially our campus pastors and our central ministry, referring back to and saying, this is great, because I can go back and go, oh, no, I'm the one that makes that decision, or, oh, this is how this works, because we have that declared and written down. So it's been huge in us to continue, so we can focus on what's most important instead of having to always figure out what's what in every situation.
We often say clarity is king in the multi-site world. And that's the hard work that you did. Well, and that's exciting. You're launching a new location. Jonathan, let me flip over to you over in Toronto, Ontario. What's going well? What's going well at your church? Where are you winning?
Yeah, I think we're winning with unchurched and dechurched people. It's funny. I think a good illustration, this last weekend, I met a woman in the lobby. Her name was Zareen. And she caught my eye. She wanted to talk. And her Muslim neighbor had invited her to attend our church. I said, "You tell. I really want to hear this story." And her neighbor had come through our food bank. We serve over 1,000 people every week, and many of them new to Canada. And then we stacked into it, because we do a thing around here called Stackable. It's a bit of our flywheel internally to build momentum. And we stacked into that sports programs, arts programs for their kids. So the parent, this Muslim lady, brought her children to these programs. Said to her neighbor, witnessed to her neighbor to come to church. She came to church, and it was interesting. She just said, "I've been here for a few months. I just reestablished faith, because in a previous era in a different nation, she had some sort of connection to the church, but she reestablished it. And she and her daughter are on their way to be baptized in the community. So she's just going through a process. And I think that's a lot of what's happening right now in our church. We went through the Unstuck process with you guys, and much like Drake was saying, we built bold moves, which became a bit of an engine for the change that we're trying to do. And the ethos that we're leading in is that kind of idea that we're church for anyone, not for everyone. And that idea has made us an invitational culture. And that is just showing up in droves. So we do something called blowing open the doors of the church. And that's a little bit of what our food bank and all the other kind of community-oriented things that have caused a lot of people to be able to stick with us. That's made quite a difference.
Yeah. That's awesome. So really what's working well is your invite culture, right?
It really is, yeah.
Wow. Really is, yeah. Wow. Where do you maybe feel a little stuck right now, Jonathan?
Yeah, I can clearly tell you this. I'm going to say that our growth is outpacing our giving. So, we have seen significant uptick in our whole next gen. All those areas have just seen significant growth, and probably Drake will say something similar in his context. But what has happened is we've got to staff towards that and support it. and there's lag giving. And so we're working on financial strategies actually for 2026 to begin to try to close that gap. But that's the hardest part right now, is managing that teetering point between having enough staff and not overstaffing and not allowing our staff to sprawl, which, the equipping culture helps us to maintain that. I often quote you, Amy, and I think you're quoting Tony when we say to our staff team all the time now, we don't reward you for what you do. We reward you now for what you give away. And so that's right. Kind of created an ability to maintain and keep up with the growth, but the giving that needs to go up.
Yeah, well, we say it all the time, giving is really a discipleship step. And if you've got a lot of new believers or just people who are checking out faith, it's going to take a while for that to catch up. But we'll have to talk to you a year from now and see if your financial strategies played out for you in 2026. Drake, how about you? Where's Beulah feeling a little stuck right now?
Honestly, I would just echo what Jonathan said. We're in the same boat with the growth that we're seeing. A lot of same thing, impact initiatives. We're a food bank depot ourselves and food hampers. There's loads of things, human trafficking, things that we work with. But primarily, the next gen, the church in general, growing and that needing to think through strategically. And I've been saying with our staff a lot as we're kind of going through this pinch point that $1 pre-COVID and $1 post-COVID or those type of things, we have to look at things a little bit differently in some of that as well. And one of our thematic goal for this year is strengthening our teams. So as we looked at like the quarterly reports, I think was super helpful to see like one of the metrics that hasn't bounced back in COVID across North America is this serving area. So we took that as a challenge as a church. We were already planning on doing it, but it was perfect timing to be able to say, hey, look, guys, like, I know we're feeling it, but how do we creatively, invite, call, and challenge people back to be able to being the church, and how do we equip the saints in that area, and how do we do that well? And so that's a big area, how we're trying to balance both of those things to go, let's not just look at the pressure point and, like Johnson has said, staff hard, but also look at, well, what does it look like if we give ministry away, and as we continue to be multi-site, to keep that those ratios at the place it needs to be, so that we can be nimble and move when we need to move.
Yep, that's great. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have the two of you on the call is the church in Canada has always been a little bit ahead of the trends when it comes to church in North America. And I would just love to hear from your perspectives, what is the state of the church in Canada from where you sit?
When you say ahead of the trend, it's usually not the positive trends you're talking about.
Right.
I think Drake would echo the same thing. Canada didn't experience some sort of collapse of the church. It was more like a long fading goodbye, a polite goodbye. And I think because we're Canadian, Yep. I think the idea of faith for many people in Canada, the institutional church. Even people are willing to engage with Jesus and certainly spirituality. And I'm finding, and I'm sure Drake is going to echo something similar, even though Canada, speaking for it, it's as diverse as the church in America. You have your rural, your suburban, your East Coast, your West Coast, your Southern, your Northern. There are very different feels in Canada for sure. But I think we're experiencing an uptick. I don't know if I call it a revival, but I think there's an exhaustion for what people have tapped into. It's no longer working for them, and they're searching for answers. And there's a hunger. I feel a hunger growing in people.
It's probably a better word, isn't it? Hunger
for meaning.
Yeah. I would just build on that to say, one of the things that I bring when I'm working with the church in Canada is some of the stats that Alpha Canada has kind of brought forward, and seeing that there is a hunger. People are much more open to faith conversations. People in the church are much more, bold or open to the idea of sharing their faith. And there seems to be, when we talk about this idea of post-Christian, I think we're like post-Christian, where it's almost like there's a bit of a reset button. And then I think also too, with the amount of people coming from different parts of the world, there is this sense of how the church is growing and also revitalizing. Maybe it's not like revival, but revitalizing with some energy of people who are seeking. And the same thing, like we're seeing all types of Sikh, Muslim, across the board of different faiths that are coming and exploring and interacting with us in community. So this is an interesting season that we're in right now as we're navigating completely uncharted waters for sure.
What I've experienced, especially in this era, is people are checking us out. They're testing community, or they're thinking about theology. They're testing community, not testing theology. And I think this has been experienced denominationally. Denominations matter less in Canada today than they probably ever have.
Okay.
I think people, the churches are winning with hospitality right now than they are with declarative statements. So we often even talk about in the church here, we have positions like any other church would, but we major on postures over positions. Postures is how you experience us. And we want you to experience us being invitational, accepting, and loving. And we do have positions, but often churches traditionally, we've led with positions. And I think that era is gone in Canada. I don't think people are interested in it. They're trying to find community and meaning. And I think then you can disciple into positions and kind of biblical truths. But I think the posture matters so much more now in this era.
Yeah, I think another thing too, and you can echo this, Jonathan, is when I'm talking about obviously different people come from different worlds, but I think, well, and I would say it's probably true more and more in the rural areas of Canada, but especially in urban centers, like it's unlikely that your church won't be multicultural. And if it isn't yet, that it's getting there. Just as people move in, there's less of these senses of like areas of city or certain. There are definitely ethnic churches. Don't get me wrong, but I know in all of our areas, even our oldest campus continues to see more and more multiculturalism. And then how do we also integrate that while recognizing we're in Canada, we are the church, but also how do we recognize that we are a mosaic of things, which is amazing. It's just a fun thing as we navigate together.
Well, that's been a headline for you, Jonathan, as you've been in on some of our content, but just in case there's new listeners to this, tell them about your kind of multicultural setting.
Yeah, like Drake said, I think you'd have to really be doing church poorly to not be multicultural in Toronto. I mean, it's the most diverse city in the world. So if you're going to be invitational and open and accepting, this means people are coming to you, and we have over 75 nationalities in our church. And it means a posture of humility, as Drake said. Of course, we're the church in Canada, but we're learning from the global church. We need the humility to recognize the global church is really the majority world church, not the North American church. I mean, it's growing, it's thriving, and there's so much we've had to learn from them in terms of prayer, the power of prayer, the things, even their heart for wanting to reach people and be community, they helping us be a community better. But that means in humility, we need to create Roma leadership structures at every level that we reflect the congregation that's in front of us. So I think if you're open, these are the people, these are our neighbors. Why would we want them to be part of our church and forming the church forward here?
Yeah. Great. Well, I would love to hear, last question, but is there a church or a ministry leader that you've worked with recently that you'd love to give a shout out to?
This was a hard question because I think we work with so many great churches, but one that we've been working with in rural Ontario, Leaksdale, St. Paul's. It's been really cool to see how they've been instituting some of the work that we've done with them, and as they've identified some of those big God-sized goals, those bold steps. That they are. I mean, they're growing hand in fist. They're seeing people coming from all different areas. They're going now looking at needing to go to 3 services, and they're thinking, how do we also revitalize the churches in these small little communities in rural Ontario to look at, is there a way for us also to be thinking kingdom minded and thinking, is that multi-site? Is that something different? And so it's just really cool to see bringing some of those steps that we work with them, seeing that benefit, but also just seeing that the limit for them right now is just, I'm just excited to see where God's going to lead them next.
I understand your excitement because you can work with 2 churches, same size, same challenges. And when you get done with the process, those 2 churches can look very different because one kind of puts their plans down and gets sucked back into the whirlwind. And then you have ones like Leaksdale, they work their plans and they start. And that's what we care about. We We just want these pastors to lead unstuck churches. So we delight with their action and the progress they make. How about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, first, big shout out to Drake, because I ran into someone from that church the last couple of weeks, and they raved about Drake's work with them and and how transformative that's been for that community. So big shout out to you, Drake. But I think I'd go to Tim Bayer. He's the lead pastor of Our Savior Church in Tacoma, Washington. What a thoughtful leader. Recognized their church was stuck, and they brought us in for a standalone staffing and structure review. And his willingness to lean in. And it takes a lot of courage to lean in to get the church unstuck. And he texted me just a couple of days ago, actually. He's just saying senior leadership teams all in place now, and how much lighter he's feeling now, how much lighter.
Yeah.
And I think, too, the realization that as you get healthier, too, accountability goes up, responsibility goes up, and effectiveness does. And so I really admire Tim's heart. He's definitely a pastor at heart, but he's got this leading edge to him, and he wants to serve this church beyond his tenure. And so positioning it well for growth. So big shout out to Tim Bayer.
Well, thank you both for joining us today. I think it's going to be really fun for our listeners to hear about what's going up in Canada. And I tried to get you to say out, about, and process as many times as I could for our American listeners.
All right, Amy, fascinating conversation. I love both of those guys and the churches that they're leading. They've been inspiring to us and the work that we do. What were your takeaways from the conversation?
Well, first, wasn't it so fun just to hear about that real spiritual hunger that's emerging across Canada?
Absolutely.
For years, the narrative in Canada was slow decline, polite disengagement, and post-Christian skepticism. But that's not the story they're living right now. You've got people from every background, new immigrants, unchurched families, de-churched, people from the Muslim background and Sikh backgrounds, actually exploring faith and showing up at church. So, and what's driving that? I love how he said it. It's not marketing. He said it's relationships. It's community ministries like food banks, sports programs, arts programs, and Alpha, places where people can build trust and simply experience the love of Jesus first. So for pastors listening, the hunger is there. The question is, are we creating those types of spaces where people can belong before they believe? So that was probably the headline for me. But another thing that stood out was this a strong invitational culture and posture of hospitality that it just seems like it's becoming the new front door of the church. Jonathan, I think, literally said that. But he said people are testing community, not theology. And Drake echoed the same thing, that the churches, they aren't thriving because they're leading with doctrinal statements. They're leading with a posture, a hospitality posture. They're creating environments, right, where people feel welcomed, seen, safe to ask questions. And as multicultural communities that they both talked about, as these grow in Canada, that posture of humility and hospitality becomes even more important. I loved how one church shared that they have those stacked ministries. I don't know if our listeners caught it, but it's the food bank plus kids programs, plus community spaces that naturally build trust. And Beulah is seeing it through Alpha and personal invitation. So the takeaway for leaders here, I think people aren't rejecting Jesus. Many of them just are waiting to see if they can trust his people, right? Hospitality is becoming really a discipleship strategy. That's what I heard in the conversation. And then, of course, growth is outpacing resources, and churches have to strengthen their teams to keep up. And that's not just Canada. That's, all of North America, I think, in churches that are growing. Both pastors, both Jonathan and Drake, name the same exact tension. Attendance and engagement are increasing faster than giving and volunteerism. And you just, when you have a lot of new believers and spiritually curious people, serving and giving don't happen immediately. There's a lag. We've always talked about the giving lag, but the serving lag is a real thing in current ministry circles that I'm in. So they're having to get intentional about financial strategy, team health, developing this equipping culture that we talked about a lot in 2025, rewarding leaders not for what they do, for what they give away. And they're rebuilding the volunteer base with fresh vision and clear pathways. So that was great. And for pastors listening, that's critical, that last point. If God brings growth, You have to be ready with systems, leaders, and a clear discipleship pathway. Otherwise,
Mhm.
growth creates pressure and maybe even stuckness instead of momentum. So those
That's
are
right.
my big three.
That's good. Yeah, it's good to be in front of that. I just talked to a pastor today where their church has grown significantly, doubled in size in about 3 years.
Wow.
And their systems have not kept pace with that growth. They weren't prepared for it, weren't ready
Mhm.
for it, didn't know it was coming. Totally understandable. But now they're playing catch up in right sizing their staff and right sizing their volunteer teams. And that is a more difficult place to lead from than if we can be out in front of it. So, good word
Mhm.
from our Canadian friends, Jonathan Drake and Drake today on that. Well, listeners, thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Our mission at the Unstuck Group is to help pastors lead unstuck churches. And every week of the year, our team is on site with pastors, helping them assess where they might be stuck. And spoiler, most churches feel stuck in some way, and then develop a plan to get on the right side of those issues. So if that's something you feel your church could benefit from, we'd love to connect. Myself and my teammate Chad are here for just a no pressure, helpful conversation about how the Unstuck process might help your church. You can connect with us at theunstuckgroup.com. Next week, we're back with a brand new series focused on the 5 common core issues we're seeing in churches right now. Can't wait to get that one going. Until then, have a great week.